Japan just crossed a line it hasn't crossed in 80 years. Recently, Tokyo officially activated a brand new missile system with a range of over 1,000 kilometers. That's enough to put Shanghai, large portions of China's eastern coastline, and yes, eventually Beijing itself, within striking distance. And China didn't just protest. It sent a naval task group straight through the Tsushima Strait, right on Japan's doorstep. Japan's upgraded Type 12 land-to-ship missiles, developed and produced by Mitsubishi Heavy Industries, became operational at Camp Kengun in Kumamoto Prefecture on March 31, 2026. And what makes this a genuinely historic moment is the range. The surface-to-ship guided missile system has a range of about 1,000 kilometers. Shanghai is about 900 kilometers from Kumamoto. That's a five-fold increase from the original Type 12, which could only reach about 200 kilometers. To be clear about what this means practically, when deployed on Japan's Ryukyu Islands, the upgraded Type 12 puts all of North Korea, all of China's eastern coastline, and all of Taiwan within range. This is not a minor upgrade, this is a fundamental change in what Japan can threaten. But that's not the only system Japan deployed. Japanese forces simultaneously deployed a hypervelocity gliding projectile system at Camp Fuji, giving Tokyo its first operational hypersonic capability intended for island defense and long-range strike missions. The Type 25 ballistic missiles, formerly known as the HVGP Block 1, are ballistic missiles developed based on the expertise of IHI and Mitsubishi Heavy Industries. To engage targets, and they use a glider located in the nose of the missile, which separates after reaching the required altitude and speed. Think of it like a ballistic missile that releases a hypersonic glide vehicle at the top of its arc, making it faster and far harder to intercept than a conventional missile. And the ambitions don't stop in 2026. By 2030, a Block 2 version with a range of up to 4,000 kilometers is expected to enter service. Japan is also procuring other foreign weapons systems, including air-launched missiles such as JASSM and JSM to arm its F-35 fighter jets. So what we're looking at is not a one-time deployment. It's the beginning of a long-term buildup, Japan constructing a layered, long-range missile architecture that didn't exist 5 years ago. Japan's defense minister Shinjiro Koizumi told reporters, "As Japan faces the most severe and complex security environment in the post-war era, it is an extremely important capability to strengthen Japan's deterrence and responsiveness. It demonstrates Japan's firm determination and capability to defend itself." What Japan just did is a doctrinal revolution. For decades, Japan's military strategy remained tightly constrained by a self-defense interpretation that largely avoided offensive reach beyond immediate territorial protection. The new missile deployments, therefore, represent the most important shift in Japanese force posture since Tokyo revised its national security strategy in 2022. Japan's post-war constitution effectively prohibited the country from maintaining offensive military capability. For 80 years, Tokyo built missile defenses, relied on the US for strike power, and kept its own forces in a reactive posture. What's changed now is that Japan has formally adopted what it calls a counterstrike capability doctrine. Together, these systems represent the operational beginning of Japan's counterstrike capability doctrine, which seeks to allow Japan to attack hostile missile launchers before they can strike Japanese territory. In plain terms, Japan is no longer willing to absorb the first blow and wait for American missiles to respond. If an adversary's launchers are identified and preparing to fire, Tokyo now has the tools and the stated doctrine to hit those launchers first. Japan's 2022 national security strategy notes that if Japan relies solely on existing missile defenses, it will become progressively more difficult to fully counter evolving missile threats. That's the logic behind everything you're watching unfold. Defense alone, Tokyo concluded, is no longer sufficient, and then there's the budget to back it up. Japan's 2026 defense budget stands at around 9 trillion yen, the highest in its recent history, with nearly 1 trillion yen allocated to developing long-range strike capabilities. Now, but we come to the really tense part of the story. Japanese military tracking showed the Chinese flotilla entering the Sea of Japan between March 29th and March 31st, only hours before Japan completed operational deployment of its upgraded Type 12 missile batteries and hypersonic glide systems. The timing carried unmistakable strategic weight because China had already warned Tokyo that deploying what Beijing described as long-range offensive weapons would trigger a strong response from the People's Liberation Army. The first ship to appear wasn't a destroyer. Japan's Ministry of Defense confirmed that the first vessel detected was the Type 815A intelligence collection ship Jinxing, which was tracked roughly 80 kilometers southwest of Tsushima Island before entering the strait heading northeast. The deployment of the Jinxing before the arrival of the larger warships strongly suggests that Beijing intended to map Japanese radar emissions, communications networks, and naval response procedures before introducing its principal surface combatants. In other words, China sent a surveillance ship first to collect intelligence on Japan's sensors and response patterns, and then brought in the heavy hitters. Shortly afterwards, Japanese tracking assets identified the Type 055 destroyer Lhasa, together with the Type 052D destroyers Guiyang and Chengdu, creating a compact but highly capable surface action group centered on layered air defense and long-range strike capability. The Lhasa is not a routine warship. The Lhasa is among the most heavily armed surface combatants in the People's Liberation Army Navy, to displacing approximately 13,000 tons and carrying 112 vertical launch cells capable of firing anti-ship, land attack, anti-air, and anti-submarine weapons. For comparison, the most advanced U.S. destroyers carry around 96 cells. The Lhasa is in that same tier. The inclusion of the Type 903A replenishment ship Kekixilihu added a significant logistical dimension because it indicated that the Chinese formation was structured not merely for symbolic transit, but for extended operations beyond the Tsushima Strait. And alongside all of this, the Chinese deployment also coincided with the first confirmed appearance of a new variant of the Y-9 maritime patrol and anti-submarine warfare aircraft over the East China Sea, suggesting a broader effort to integrate naval and airborne surveillance operations. Taken together, the synchronized movement of advanced warships, intelligence vessels, replenishment assets, and surveillance aircraft points to a deliberate Chinese rehearsal for future high-intensity operations along Japan's southwestern maritime approaches. Beijing's political response was equally sharp. Chinese Foreign Ministry spokeswoman Mao Ning condemned Japan's deployment as neo-militarism, arguing that Tokyo's expanding strike capability represented an offensive departure from Japan's post-war constitutional restraints. The Tsushima Strait has historically served as the principal gateway between the East China Sea and the Sea of Japan, making it one of Northeast Asia's most strategically valuable waterways. Any Chinese warship moving toward the Sea of Japan, northern Japan, or the Russian Far East must normally transit either the Tsushima Strait or the narrower passages near Hokkaido. By sending a high-end naval task group through this exact bottleneck at the exact moment Japan switched on its new missiles, China was making a very specific point. We can project power through the waters you're trying to control. Your missiles don't change that. But Japan's deployment is actually designed to complicate that calculation. Japan's decision to deploy long-range missiles in Kyushu has effectively transformed the southern approaches to the Tsushima Strait into an increasingly militarized anti-access zone. And this isn't just about the strait. The Miyako Strait is a critical maritime choke point, that the People's Liberation Army Navy must pass through to break out into the open waters of the Pacific. China has on multiple occasions sent its warships through the Miyako Strait, a maneuver that may be necessary to blockade Taiwan from the east and deter US and allied intervention. Japan's missile deployments are, at their core, designed to make these choke points dangerous for Chinese naval forces, to raise the cost of any future operation involving Taiwan high enough that Beijing has to think twice. China's rapid military buildup and Beijing's increasingly aggressive behavior have made the PRC an unprecedented and most serious strategic challenge for Japan. Over the past decade, China has dramatically expanded its armed forces. Its defense budget has more than doubled, reaching $213 billion in 2022. The size of its navy has grown by 60% to 134 ships, while its combat aircraft fleet has also more than doubled, reaching 1,270 modern aircraft. Japan, meanwhile, is working from a position of playing catch-up. Japan's capabilities are far more limited by comparison, and its defense budget stands at about $52 billion, with 72 major warships and 320 modern aircraft in service. The missile build-out is in part Japan's answer to this gap, fielding precision, long-range systems that can threaten high-value targets without needing to match China ship for ship. There's also the Taiwan factor. The decision also reflects Tokyo's growing concern that a Taiwan Strait contingency could rapidly spill into Japan's southwestern islands, forcing the self-defense forces to fight across an extended maritime battle space stretching from Kyushu to Okinawa. Japan's prime minister has gone further than any previous Japanese leader on this. The prime minister even framed military intervention as an obligation for Japan and the United States if necessary, arguing that if Washington chose not to act, it would trigger the collapse of bilateral relations. That's a dramatically stronger statement than anything Tokyo has said publicly before. It signals that Japan now sees the Taiwan conflict not as a distant American problem, but as an existential issue for Japan itself. The deployment also signals a doctrinal break from the decades-long assumption that Japan would rely almost entirely upon the United States for offensive strike missions, while Tokyo concentrated principally upon missile defense and homeland protection. What you're watching unfold right now is not a single news story. It's the visible edge of a massive structural shift in East Asian security, one where Japan is rearming at a speed it hasn't attempted since World War II, where China is responding with military demonstrations designed to signal that it will not be deterred, and where the geography of straits, islands, and missile ranges is becoming the new front line. The question that nobody has a clean answer to right now is where this competition stabilizes, if it stabilizes at all. Because when one side activates missiles and the other responds with warships, the space for miscalculation gets a lot smaller. If you want to stay ahead of how this develops, subscribe. This is going to keep moving fast.